In 1901, a crew of Greek sponge divers surfaced from a wreck near a tiny island and handed their captain a shapeless lump of corroded bronze nobody could explain. Buried inside that green, unassuming rock sat a machine so advanced that it took modern scientists more than 100 years to admit what their own eyes were showing them. Picture the Aegean in the spring of 1900. A storm forces a sponge fishing crew to shelter beside a barren island called Antikythera, wedged between Crete and mainland Greece. Diver Elias Stadiatis goes down first, sealed inside a heavy brass helmet. Sinking through cold water toward a seabed everyone expects to hold nothing but rock and sponges. He surfaces shaking, babbling to his crew about a pile of dead men and horses scattered across the ocean floor, bodies frozen forever in bronze and marble. His captain, Demetrius Contis, dives down to see for himself and realizes the truth. Not corpses at all, but an ancient shipwreck buried under 2,000 years of silt. The ship had gone down around 60 BC, likely hauling looted Greek treasure toward Rome, when it struck the rocks off Antikythera and spilled everything into darkness. For nearly a year, diverse and primitive gear hauled up marble figures, bronze statues, glassware, and coins from the wreck, in conditions brutal enough that one diver died. Among crates of stunning Greek art pulled from the deep, one object drew almost no attention whatsoever: a shapeless, corroded lump barely bigger than a hardcover book. It sat inside the National Archaeological Museum in Athens, catalogued and quietly ignored, while excited archaeologists obsessed over the marble statues recovered from that same wreck. Then, in May of 1902, an archaeologist named Valerio Stais was sorting through the wreck's finds when a crack in the bronze lump caught his eye. Inside the crust of corrosion, he spotted something that made absolutely no sense. A gear wheel, precisely cut, with tiny triangular teeth like something from a clock. A gear, pulled from a shipwreck 2,000 years old. Nothing built by human hands was supposed to look anything like that for another 1,000 years. Stais suspected he had stumbled onto some kind of astronomical instrument, but the scientific establishment of 1902 simply wasn't ready to take him seriously at all. Precision gearing from ancient Greece? Most scholars assumed it had to be some later addition, an astrolabe that had drifted into the wreck by pure accident. So for decades, the fragments sat forgotten in a museum drawer, dismissed as a curiosity too strange and too advanced to fit anyone's tidy timeline of history. It took until the 1950s for a British physicist named Derek de Solla Price to finally look closer and refuse to simply look away again. Price spent years photographing every fragment, and by the 1970s, he'd secure permission to X-ray the corroded lumps of bronze without destroying a single piece. What those early X-rays revealed genuinely staggered him. Gear behind gear behind gear, layered like the guts of a pocket watch nobody was supposed to have built yet. He eventually counted roughly 30 separate bronze gears, some no wider than a coin, all meshing together inside a wooden case about the size of a shoebox. Price called it a computer. In 1974, while describing a device built somewhere around 100 BC, plenty of historians assumed he was simply exaggerating for effect. But the fragments kept their finest secrets locked away, corrosion hiding thousands of microscopic details that even 70s-era X-ray equipment couldn't fully bring into focus. The real breakthrough didn't arrive until 2005, when a team called the Antikythera Mechanism Research Project brought in genuinely industrial-grade CT scanning equipment. A machine originally built for inspecting jet turbine blades got aimed instead at a 2,000-year-old lump of bronze, and it saw straight through solid rock. Layer by layer, hidden gear teeth appeared on the screen, alongside faint Greek inscriptions, thousands of tiny characters that nobody had ever managed to read. Researchers led by Tony Freeth and Mike Edmonds slowly pieced together not just a machine, but something like an instruction manual engraved right onto its own casing. The front dial displayed the zodiac alongside the Egyptian calendar, tracking the sun and moon's shifting position through the sky, day after day after day. A tiny sphere, painted half silver and half black, rotated on its own axis to show the moon's exact phase, precisely as it would appear that very night. On the back, two spiral dials unwound like seashells. One tracked a 19-year lunar cycle used to reconcile the months of the moon with the years of the sun. The second spiral predicted eclipses years in advance, built around a 223-month cycle the Babylonians had first discovered centuries earlier, a cycle known as the Saros. But the strangest part comes later, in a detail almost nobody outside the research team expects. The moon's gear train doesn't spin at one steady, boring rate. Its speed quickens and slows as it turns, exactly the way the real moon does in the sky, because its actual orbit isn't a perfect circle at all. The mechanism's designers solved that problem with a pin-and-slot gear, one wheel riding slightly off-center from another, quietly mimicking an ellipse nobody would even name for another 1,500 years. That's the very same shape Johannes Kepler would later use to describe planetary orbits, already built into bronze by someone working in the 2nd century BC. There was even a small dial tracking the 4-year cycle of the Great Greek Games, the Olympics among them, ticking steadily down toward the next gathering. Turn the hand crank mounted on its side, and every single gear inside moves in perfect sync, showing you the sky on any date, past or future. Modern engineers who've built working replicas insist the level of miniaturization and precision looks less like rough, ancient craftsmanship and more like early Swiss watchmaking. And that's exactly what makes the timeline so unsettling. Nothing this mechanically sophisticated turns up again anywhere in the historical record for well over 1,000 years. The next comparable geared astronomical clocks don't appear until medieval European cathedrals start building them in the 1300s, more than a millennium after this one sank. Somewhere between the sinking of that ship and the slow collapse of Rome, the knowledge required to build machines like this simply vanished from the world. So who actually built it? The inscriptions and overall design point toward the Eastern Mediterranean, quite possibly the island of Rhodes, a genuine hub of Greek astronomy. The astronomer Hipparchus was working on Rhodes around that exact same time, and his known lunar theories matched the mechanism's calculations almost eerily well. The Roman writer Cicero even described a bronze device built by his friend Posidonius that modeled the movements of the sun, moon, and 5 known planets. Maybe the Antikythera Mechanism is a surviving descendant of that same workshop tradition, a craft passed carefully from teacher to student and then simply lost. Wars, fires, and the slow collapse of the old Hellenistic world could easily have erased whichever school first learned to cut bronze gears this precisely. We tend to picture the ancient world as fairly simple. White togas, marble columns, men debating philosophy quietly in open courtyards under the Mediterranean sun. But somewhere inside that same world, someone was quietly building a working model of the entire cosmos small enough to fit inside a wooden shoebox. Only one such machine has ever been found, which means either it was genuinely rare even then, or every other copy has simply been lost to time. Whichever civilization built, it had mastered a kind of precision engineering we assumed belonged only to our own century. Then somehow let the knowledge slip away. If a machine like that could vanish for 2,000 years and nearly get thrown away twice by the people who found it, subscribed, Because who knows what else from these lost civilizations is still buried down there, waiting.